Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gisela Kwok, and I'm the Director of the Provincial Disability Supports Initiative branch within the Disability Services Division in Human Services. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's webcast. This is the fifth in a series of monthly webcasts, which we hope provides a forum for ongoing discussions of issues around meaningful and fulfilling employment for persons with disabilities. Before we begin, we have a short video message from Associate Minister of Services for Persons with Disabilities, Naresh Bharwaj, that we would like to play for you now.
Good afternoon. My name is Naresh Bharwaj, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our fifth Employment First webcast. Today, we're talking about the importance of partnerships and how to build winning partnerships that benefit everyone, especially those with disabilities. It's no secret that we all benefit when we create more employment opportunities for people with disabilities. Employers get the skilled workers they need, and people with disabilities earn more money, learn new skills, build new relationships, and feel more a part of their community. Dozens of employers, agencies, and government divisions already recognize the potential and have taken action. Yet, the employment rate for Albertans with disabilities remain below average. We can do better. I know we can. And I believe that one of the keys to getting better results is working together, sharing our expertise and resources, and tackling this challenge as a united front. That is one of the keys to the Alberta Employment First strategy, developing ways to work together that help create more employment opportunities for Albertans who have disabilities. Government cannot do this alone. It will take governments, agencies, employers, and the disability community working together to overcome the barriers and open the doors. And that is why we will be hearing today from the City of Edmonton and several employment agencies about what they have learned about forming successful partnerships. I hope you find today's webcast both informative and useful in your efforts to welcome more Albertans with disabilities into your workplace. Thank you for joining us today.
Everyone knows that collaborative partnerships can make projects more resource, stable, and successful. However, establishing and then sustaining them is not that simple. In today's webcast, the Partners of Abilities at Work program have joined us to discuss their process for building, sustaining, and maintaining a successful partnership. This collaborative program has led to 10 people with intellectual disabilities finding meaningful, permanent employment within the City of Edmonton in the last 7 months. We're joined by all of the Partners of Ability Works program today. Ruth Ramos is Senior Program Manager with Employment Services at Chrysalis. Grace Lomertz is Program Manager of Day Options for the Chrysalis Society. Mark Farr is the Disability Outreach Consultant with the City of Edmonton's Human Resource Department. Bart Williamson is the Manager of Employer Engagement for Gateway Association. And Wendy McDonald is the Chair of Rotary Employment Partnership and Development Director at Alberta Association for Community Living. And the discussion today will be moderated by Carissa Halton, a writer and former Managing Director of the Mustard Seed Edmonton. Much of her work has focused on issues of poverty and inclusive community development. I'll hand it off to Carissa now. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Thanks so much for the introductions. I'm pleased to moderate our conversation today, panel. Thank you all for being here. The first 45 minutes today will be spent speaking primarily to the panel. However, if you do have a question of clarification regarding the things that we're speaking to and about, please feel free to post that in the web chat window, and we'll try to get to those questions as early as we can, as quickly as we can. And then finally, in the last 15 minutes of the hour, we'll spend primarily with your questions from the web. So please feel free to continue posting your interactions in the web chat. Post your questions there as well, and your feedback for us. We really appreciate to hear from you. Today's session is also being recorded, and the video will be posted on the Alberta Employment First webpage. So I think we're going to start today off with you, Mark. At the end of this session, just for our webcast viewers, we'll be showing the 7-minute video that Abilities at Work program has created. So stay tuned for that at the end of this hour. But could you give us a quick summary as we start off about what this program is about and the objectives that you have for it?
Yeah, the Abilities at Work program was created last summer, and it's specifically designed to employ people with intellectual disabilities within the City of Edmonton. And so one of the pieces that makes it unique is that each position created is customizable, it's individualized, and it is unique. So what the city does is it identifies employment opportunities that fit within the program, and then we work with our partners we work collaboratively to provide a lot of support to each of those different work areas.
So how and why was it initiated? Take us back, 3-4 years ago when really the seed of this started.
Yeah, well, the City of Edmonton is an equal opportunity employer, and I'm part of an outreach team. So I have the disability portfolio, but we also have consultants that work on Aboriginal portfolio, youth, newcomer, and so we've got a commitment to diversity and inclusion, and we've got different initiatives that we try to do to help employ people with disabilities. But early last year, Mayor and Council asked administration to provide a report on what the city was doing to employ people with intellectual disabilities specifically. And we had various people from the agencies come and speak as well. And what we found from that was that, without meaning to be, the city had barriers for people with intellectual disabilities to be able to be employed at the city. And so what we did is, after that meeting, we got together and met with different agencies, did some environmental research, found out best practices as far as what was happening, not just in the city, but in the country as well, and tried to put together a program that would work for a 97% unionized environment with a city that's, there's anywhere from 12 to 15,000 employees at a given time.
Wow. Now, how many people with intellectual disabilities had you employed at the time that you started looking at this program?
Well, the city doesn't ask people to identify whether they have disabilities or not when they're coming on. Okay. So we didn't really have stats on that. Okay. We do have an employee engagement survey that goes out every couple of years. So we knew that 7.8% of our employees had a disability of some kind in 2012. But as far as people with intellectual disabilities, very few.
Okay. Wendy, can you walk us through what it was like for an individual with an intellectual disability to get a job at the city before Abilities at Work started?
Well, really it was impossible, to be honest, for somebody with an intellectual disability to get employment at the city. And just to say that, to echo Mark's comments, it wasn't that the city is a bad organization or that it was intentional, but we do find that often the intake processes that work for individuals without intellectual disabilities are not going to work for people with intellectual disabilities. So, for example, the city has an online test, for lack of a better word, a pre-screening test for anybody that applies for a job. Okay. And for somebody with an intellectual disability, there was no way they were going to get past that pre-screening. So what we talked about was, with the city, is the same conversation that we have with other employers, is a term we use is intentional hiring. So it's not that there isn't an HR process in place when you're hiring somebody with an intellectual disability, but it is being conscious of looking at this pool of workforce for particular jobs. And in a sense, we bypassed the city's regular hiring processes in order to be able to be successful in terms of the city hiring people with intellectual disabilities.
Yeah, okay. and that was really the whole piece, is that, when we found that, this is a piece of the community of Edmonton that we live in that, really had no way to be employed with the city always wants to be an inclusive, diverse place for people to work, and we want to make sure that we're open to all those communities. So that was something that we found, if if the regular recruitment process that, you know, it's there for a reason. We get over 100,000 applications a year, and you know, on some entry-level positions, 200 or 300 people might apply. We want to make sure that people with intellectual disabilities are able to compete for the right positions. So we had to find a way that went outside of that regular process.
So I would say that the reason the Rotary Employment Partnership exists is primarily for that reason. Is we know that the regular typical processes for people with without disabilities is not equitable for people with intellectual disabilities. So that's the whole reason that actually probably all of us exist in terms of the work we do.
I appreciate how you said that the regular processes are not equitable, like, so you needed to create a different process.
Well, and yeah, to touch on it, it really, they don't mean to be exclusive, right? I mean, we do, you know, we welcome applications from all qualified candidates, and when you have that number, you have to have a process that is manageable. But it's the thing, if there are additional barriers, and you got to find a way to deal with those, right?
Well, I mean, you said the stat yourself. 100,000 applications you get at the city. Is that
per year? Yeah.
Per year, like that. That's a lot of applications, and no doubt that requires a huge HR, you know, strategy and construction. Now, just quickly to back up a little bit, I'm curious to know: have you found that for finding jobs for people with intellectual disabilities, is it easier for those individuals to find jobs with smaller companies or businesses that don't have perhaps the same kind of HR constructs that a larger corporation might?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that the piece that we look at more is workplace culture. So whether it's a large organization or a small organization, if that workplace culture piece is there and open to the idea, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
And I think it's the person-to-person contact with the individual that's really important, so they get to know who this person is first, and then look at the workplace culture and the inclusive environment.
Okay.
And I would say one more piece, in addition to culture, it's the leadership in the organization. So when we had a conversation with Mark, when it's a large organization like the City of Edmonton, we talked about them identifying who are their leaders within their organization, because in a sense it's mini organizations, right, in a large organization. So whether it's a small or a large organization, for us it's the same process. It's who's the leader, who's the supervisor that thinks outside the box, is willing to be creative, is willing to be open, and kind of, you know, start with those leaders, whether it be a smaller or large organization.
Now, Mark, why do a partnership? Why bring all these people around the table? Like, this seems complicated, even just for our panel, right? I mean, so why bring on the agencies?
Well, I think one of the things that you hear about as far as, you know, maybe barriers for people with intellectual disabilities being hired, you have people are, if they've maybe never worked with someone, much less hired someone with a disability, they're going to have a fear of the unknown. It's something they've never experienced before. Maybe they're worried that they're not going to have the time to train them, or that they're going to take a lot of extra work to be able to, you know, have them part of their workforce. And so what we wanted to do with this program is find a way to provide a lot of support to any work area within the city that might be interested in taking part of this program. And that's something that, you know, from my element, I wouldn't be able to provide by myself, and we don't really have something, a structure in the city to be able to provide that out to sort of send out to each different work area, whereas we've got experts around the table from these organizations that do exactly that. And so by bringing on different organizations in partnership, we're able to, you know, sort of leverage their expertise, and they can provide the kind of support that makes it so that it's very easy for any work area or hiring manager to see that hiring someone with an intellectual disability makes sense.
I think that's something that as a group that we had recognized that, sometimes with employment first, your focus is on the job seeker, the person looking for that meaningful employment, but there is that other side that even within that collaborative approach, you have to make sure that you also work very closely with the managers within the city departments, with the supervisors, that you create that collaborative approach there as well, so that you create that foundation, that fundamental that is there to make it successful. So, and like Mark had said, to support them so that they have the tools that they feel comfortable supporting the new hiree when they go into their employment site. And I think that's having the two sides of that strong collaboration that has made our project very successful thus far.
Now, as far as I understand it, as agencies, you folks have never worked together in this way. Is that true? Did I understand that correctly?
True.
Okay, so this is unique in terms of the agency collaboration, as well as the kind of work that you're doing with the employer as, in some ways, your client. Do you consider the City of Edmonton your client, or is that not the
I'd use the
way?
word partner.
Yeah.
Partner?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
There was a strong protocol that was developed before the partners even really started, looking for individuals that the city could hire. Could you tell me a little bit more about that, Barb?
Sure, I think it's the same, it's something that's done every time there's a position available. So Mark will put feelers out for leaders in departments who are interested in hiring inclusively, and then he gets back to the group, and the group as an entire group, we rotate through each opportunity. So a position might come up and it might be Gateway's turn, and we can either accept, or if we have someone we're supporting who might be an ideal candidate for a position, or we'll pass and it'll go to someone else. And it happens that way every time we come back to the table. And then after that, we work with the managers, look at the tasks, and Mark does some of that work, I think, as well, where we look at the tasks that need to be dealt with through employment, the kinds of needs they have as an employer, and try and build those into a customized position. And then once that person, there's a basically the new hire is introduced to the people they'll be working with, and it's a discussion that takes place, and once that person starts, then the support is ongoing. So it might be once a week to begin with, once every second week, and then there's intervals, 3, 6, 9, and 12-month intervals where we check back in with each area.
And so this was all designed before you even started. That's correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's a diverse group. No two organizations do things exactly the same, but we wanted to make sure that we were providing. We're providing a service and doing this with this program, so we wanted to have a pretty uniform service that we're providing. And so together, we agreed on a process that we figured would work each time and maximize chances of success. Because not every hire is going to work out, disability or not. So all we could do is try to put something in place that would help maximize the success chances.
And I think with the protocol, we kind of agreed as a group what we would feel what is best practice, in our field. And then with that protocol and the process that we had in place, also took a little bit of the competitiveness away, because it was fairly easy to step aside, because you really are all working towards that common goal, because you do want that project to be successful. So if you have another agency that perhaps has a better candidate for the positions, it's okay to step back, because you know that they will be more successful, and you know that next time your turn will be, or not our turn of course, but you will be on the top of the list for perhaps other people that are looking for meaningful employment that you can then support. So I think that protocol has helped us to design the belief that we all believe in, and the vision that we have of employment for people with intellectual disabilities.
And
One
then
of
we
the
are working
reasons-
together as a team.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the reasons for the protocol,
absolutely. Yeah.
which works for the city as it does with any other employer, is when you can lay out, so when Mark can go to a manager and say, this is the support you're going to get, so there's no question for the staff that are thinking about having somebody come into their department. They know it's not a surprise, it's not a question. They know who the partner is, they know what kind of the baseline support is, but they also know that if they need more, that we're there as a partner. And so I think to be able to communicate that out to potential supervisors or coworkers is really critical in terms of, being willing to kind of, try this.
So I always think, and this is just probably because I'm on the outside of, is I always think of employment agencies for people with disabilities as supporting the person in the job, like the person with a disability in a job. But you're talking about a different kind of support.
Yeah,
So
we
tell me more
take
about
pride
that.
in supporting the employer as much as the potential employee.
Okay.
So Mark talked a little bit about it in terms of sometimes there's, an organization or a manager who's absolutely willing but doesn't know how, has questions, and there's fear. So our role is to come in and have those conversations. Talk about what are the concerns, what are the fears, what are the bumps that you think you might anticipate. And one is we do a little bit of, I guess, myth busting, because some of it isn't true. But the other is we can walk with that supervisor and manager during those first days and weeks in terms of how to support that employee. So we are, excuse me, absolutely interested in supporting the individual, but we know this employment isn't going to be successful if the employer isn't supported as well. So we absolutely see it as beyond just supporting the individual.
And oftentimes that employer support piece is stronger. So a lot of times we find in working with employers that the employer actually needs more support than the job seeker themselves. We find that in the majority of places where we find work for people.
And I think part of the success has been having those preliminary conversations with the employer as well as the staff, because the staff also attend that preliminary conversation where you're looking at best strategies to support the individual. So I think with having that openness and willing to have those sometimes difficult conversations, if there are questions that you may not be willing to ask when the person's there, and it's done in, I think, a very respectful manner. That all questions are answered. So I think that's a really good foundation to start off with. And you do establish as well as a mentor for the individual within that placement or within that job. So that's really important to have, is to have a buddy who can they go to if they have any difficulties, if there's any concerns. So that's another step to success for the individual.
Yeah, another piece that I just want to touch on, since we're talking about support, is from the city side. It was something Barb touched on a little bit, but we find it so valuable to be able to have the organizations that we partnered with. They pre-screen any of the candidates that are being put forward. They know that they're employment ready and that they could be a potential fit for the job already. That's something that the city doesn't have to do. So they're ready to go from that point of view. And then also, when the candidate is selected, the organizations know that candidate, they know that person really well, what it would take to make sure that they're successful in the workplace, if there's any supports they need to have, so they can almost do an orientation to the work area beforehand and say, this is the person that's going to be joining your team, here's how you work best with them, here's how to be successful, and everyone's on the same page when the person starts.
We have a couple questions, I think, from the World Wide Web. Tina, do you want to throw us one?
So one of the questions was a user called Best Mom, and she says, are there positions out there for those with intellectual disabilities that require more than just the minimal amount of supports?
So the answer is yes. I can't speak to all of the 10 positions at the city, so but we absolutely, through our partnership, have individuals that require one-on-one support. The goal is always to have the individual supported as naturally as possible, but somebody with more significant disabilities, that's not always going to be possible. But that has not been a barrier or an issue with the City of Edmonton.
Yeah, and I think that's the pieces, in pre-screening candidates for any of the positions. We want candidates that are going to be able to be independent in the role eventually. We don't expect them to be independent the first day when they walk on or after one shift. And I think that's why the individualized approach works, is that no two hires are the same. And so the support that each of the agency provides is different each time, depending on who the candidate is.
Can you walk us through an example of
how you've customized a job. I'm not totally clear on so you go into a department like the bus barns, and then what? Like, so the bus barns manager says, I'd like to hire someone through abilities to work. You say okay. You send over Chrysalis, and then what?
Well, it's. I mean, it even starts a little bit back before that, because that's something that is really important to us in this program. Is that each of the positions are meaningful work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is not a charity program at all. We're looking for work from an area that needs to be done, where maybe it's something that they're not getting done each day, or something where maybe someone that's getting paid a tremendous amount of money to do a really kind of routine task. That could be something that maybe could be carved off, and something that someone from Abilities at Work could do to free up the other person to do some, you know, the higher level tasks, right? And so once we have an area that, you know, they know about the program and they think that maybe they've got some work that could fit for it, we then, we find which one of the agencies will be able to come and support them. But depending on the candidates that get selected, that's when we modify based on, you know, how many hours they're working per week, the shift length. We always ask each of the areas to also provide a larger list of tasks than will often actually be done, because we want the candidates to be able to do work that is not only going to be able to help the area, but fits within their abilities too.
And that focus on the candidate's abilities is also, I mean, that's really half of what's going on. So when we do discovery with potential job seekers, a lot of those questions are the questions that we ask revolve around, what do you love to do? What are you passionate about? What are you naturally already talented at? And so that when we're bringing a candidate to the city, we have a really good understanding of, okay, you know, that person would really fit well in this area, and this is why, and the tasks and the abilities are matched.
That's how it goes against maybe the typical recruitment process a little bit too. Is you might, I mean, with the city, like I said, 97% of the roles are unionized. A lot of job descriptions, set job descriptions, and class specifications, where, you know, maybe you get someone with an intellectual disability that would get brought forward for something, and they'd look at the job description and say, oh no, they can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do that. We wanted to look at abilities rather than, you know, what can the person do. So what can we actually fit with the needs of the area?
Maybe it's already been implied with what Barb said, but I'd just like to say that one of the reasons this, I think, initiative is working so well is, in a sense, the agencies around the table have kind of taken their egos away. So we really look at the job that comes forward and, you know, have a sincere look at the job seekers we have. If we don't have a job seeker that we, you know, honestly thinks is going to fit or be successful, because Mark talked about we do that pre-screening, we, you know, put that job back out to the other agencies. So for us, it really is the most critical piece is around successful employment for both an individual and for the employer, who in this case is the City of Edmonton. And I think that's a critical piece of this work that I don't want to get lost, in a sense, in terms of our collaboration and working together.
And then in the course of the 10, in terms of the 10 individuals that have been hired, has it kind of, in the end, that organic approach to, has it evened out across the agencies?
It has,
in the
actually.
end? It has? Oh, well, isn't that kind of interesting?
I mean, sometimes, like in one of our cases, we had 2 positions become available that we had 2 job seekers that were very, you know, it was really something that they had wanted for such a long time. But then we also, because you are committed to that quality, you also know, you know, we don't have the job coaches available right now that they can go in and provide the support and the mentoring that perhaps the employer would need. So we passed, because that is part of that success that reflects, I think, on all agencies, and that's something that I think that Wendy had alluded to. We're all willing to do that, because we know we need to do that in order to be successful. So definitely, and then for some reason it just kind of balanced out towards the end, and it really worked well.
Tina, what was that second question that you have from the floor?
In a way, I feel like you've answered it to some degree. The viewer was asking if the jobs created for the clients or the existing positions modified. And I think in a way you've touched on it.
Yeah, I
Both.
mean, it is.
Both.
It's a
Right.
mix, right? I mean, an area comes forward with some work that they need to have done, but really it's customized based on the individual as well.
How many of the individuals are they generally working part-time, full-time? Or is it just all across the board?
Yeah, we've got some. I don't want to use the word limits, but with the program, people can work up to 16 hours per week, and so that allows flexibility within that. They don't have to work the 16, but that is the cap that we've got on it right now.
And are these unionized positions?
Each of these positions are out of scope, and so that is a piece that's really important too, is that this does go outside of the typical recruitment process. So what we wanted to do was bring the union groups, I think there's many different, 7 or so different union groups within the City of Edmonton, and so we approached them as we were planning this program to let them know what our approach was going to be and make sure that they were supportive and on board. And that is something that we were able to do. Is the Coalition of Civic Unions are very supportive of this, and we were able to get letters of understanding with the different key union groups to go outside of this regular recruitment process and do the pre-screening with this group rather than having to put everything out to an open posting where they'd again be competing with those other 100,000 people.
Do you see any of these individuals perhaps moving into different roles or even expanding their hours of employment? Like, how long do they work for the city where they considered to be the Abilities at Work program, right? Where they're limited to the 16 hours.
Well, that's something that, with the program, anyone's gaining employment experience as they're working in a position. If they find that, they've gained the experience to then apply for other positions, then absolutely, yeah, we encourage that with any employee within the city, disability or not, to look at career progression. So.
And I think that's what we've seen also for the individuals who are in certain departments. There has been a lot of growth for them where they are taking on new skills, they are more motivated to do things, and that managers have discovered that they have a really good skill set in somewhere else. So and that's been wonderful that managers have brought that up, and to think that there is more potential for career development, and I think that's what a lot of the individuals are looking at as a career. So that's been wonderful.
And I would say the other thing that has happened at the city that does happen typically for us is we've started with a job, or somebody started with a job, and in pretty short order the staff have recognized this person has more capability than what we originally we thought, and have demonstrated, and so already our staff have gone back in to help support the growth in tasks and duties.
Oh, interesting.
And I think sometimes, at least in one of our cases, the supervisors and the managers were so impressed with the quality of the work that they were actually going to approach Mark and say, could we please hire more people, because they're very dedicated employees, and so very open to even expanding the number of people coming into the city and working, which I think is a very positive outcome.
Yeah, it speaks to one of the other goals of the program is the kind of organic culture change that happens because of it.
Yes,
so.
absolutely.
Tina, you have a question from
Yes.
the web?
So based on your experience working together, is there one thing you would recommend other partnerships do as a best practice now that you've had a few people placed? And is there a note of caution you have?
I think one best practice it has been the protocol, where it's been behind the scenes work that we've done on behalf of the individual as well as with individuals. So the employer hasn't seen all the preliminary work that has been the conversation, setting up the protocol, that no matter what agency is up and doing the training, it's the same. Unique to the individual, but the same. So in a caution, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I think one piece that at least definitely helped us in getting started was it was a very open conversation, a lot of transparency about what we were all hoping to accomplish, and being open about, if any of the different organizations have restrictions or limits or anything like that, and from the city side, if there were things that, were going to be limitations as well, we're open to discuss that.
I think the other thing that's critical is the group meets regularly. So even though the partnership has started and placements are happening, the partners meet on we really have regular and reliable conversations.
How regular?
Monthly.
Once a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, in that way, we're regularly sharing best practices of what's working within the program with each other too.
And I think there's that willingness and that openness too, if you're struggling with a certain thing, to be able to come back and say, have you run into this as well? How have you dealt with it? So that you can even for each other have kind of like advisors and kind of mentorship too, to say, best practice there again, but also what did you do in that situation, or what would you recommend, so that we can support the new hiree and the employer.
How, maybe Ruth, you could answer this one for me. How is this model different than what you have done traditionally as an employment agency for people with disabilities?
I think one big thing, a change has been, it's really saved time because the work is more intentional. It's focused for the individual. It's not doing the cold calling, which would take a lot of time with very little results or outcomes. As where there's clear lines of communication with the partnership as well as with the managers and the staff, because of that protocol that has been set in place. So those are the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of organizations, it's, as far as inclusive employment go, it's not breaking the mold with that side of it. I think it's just a matter of us actually, working together to find something that works for an organization as large as the city.
Right. And again, you said 12 to 15,000 employees.
Depending on the time of the year, yeah, because they're seasonal. employees.
Okay.
So Jill wants to just clarify, these are positions that are part of a union within the City of Edmonton or not? These are not unionized jobs?
That's right, they're out of scope. Yeah.
Out of scope, okay.
And that's part of the reason that we're able to make them be so flexible and customized, so they don't have to stick to a rigid class specification or job description.
Are the benefits so does the employee get the benefits their colleague that's a union member would get, or no?
With out of scope, and because they're working less than 20 hours a week, then they don't get those benefits, no.
Okay.
But as you said, there is potentially the opportunity for individuals to, and now they would be then moving more into the mainstream application process, though, if they were to apply for a 0.8 FTE in their department, let's say.
With that, and I mean, part of that is you're going to gain a lot of skills about, how the city works, and, we have something that's called our staff support services as well, where a lot of people get their starts in careers with the city. So for a lot of people, if they're interested in that kind of the clerical and office, doing an abilities at work position might be something that would lead into staff support. So it's almost like an early step to be able to get there.
Barb, maybe can you tell us a little bit about the accommodations? So when you come into an area and a position, and how do you decide what accommodations need to happen, and what do some of those accommodations look like, big or small?
It again depends on each individual. So you might have someone who can't work with a lot of noise, or you might have someone who can't work with a certain kind of lighting or in a certain kind of environment, or it could be as simple as using a filing jig, which one of our employees with the city uses.
What's that?
It's hard to explain. It helps organize the filing in a way that makes it easier for her to understand the numbers.
Okay.
I guess is a good way to describe it.
Yeah. An accommodation tool, right?
Yeah, but often the key accommodation is to build in that natural mentoring support, which was mentioned earlier. That having a natural mentor to ask and having those regular conversations, then you can adjust or add accommodations or remove. But again, because you're focusing on the skills and abilities of that person and blending those with the needs of that employment area, that reduces the need for heavy accommodation.
Now, Grace, when you guys you're supporting an individual, you've done the introductions and they've been there for half a year, let's say. Their supervisor changes.
Yeah.
What happens?
Within our organization, we do try to keep in contact, and if either the supervisor changes and that might create some barriers for success, or there's new tasks involved, we will have someone go back in if that is requested to support them, perhaps help them learn those tasks and move out again. But that is specific towards Excel. I can't speak for the other agencies if they have that, but we won't be able to do it on an ongoing basis. But I think it's one of the things that we can reassure the employer that we are there if you need further mentoring, or if the individual asks us to come in because they feel a little uncomfortable or require a little bit more support. But again, that's, I think, Excel.
And the workplace culture piece, once having someone with an intellectual disability, once that person becomes part of your workplace culture, fully inclusive, a fully inclusive workplace culture, those barriers sort of recede a little bit once you start to see that other staff members, all the staff are on board. A recent employer that we support made sure that all of his managers and all of his staff were on board before someone was. So even if he had moved to another location, or that natural support again would still exist.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's another area where that's something where I can help with too. I can act as a support, where we actually just had it with one of the placements where I was speaking to someone from the partnership, and they were saying, we can't get a hold of this supervisor. Do you know what's happening? And I had heard on my end, yep, actually the person has changed. Here's the contact number for the new person. And maybe that's something that would have been a little trickier if I hadn't been available. But
So our protocol is a little different. We follow up for 5 years. So not as much as we do the first days and weeks, obviously. And then if we've gone kind of a 5-year period that we haven't heard, the employer knows they can always contact us. But we're really interested in sustained employment, and there are bumps and transitions, and sometimes it is when a new supervisor comes in or a new owner comes in, and so we want to be available during those times, those transition times.
Right, because it would occur to me that transitions are going to happen in anybody's work life.
Yeah.
And certainly, perhaps the people that you're placing aren't going to have any harder time than their neighbor in the next cubicle, right? I mean, everyone has a hard time.
Our support is ongoing, always. So as long as someone is still willing to have us involved, there's no cutoff, right? We don't leave. We don't cut anyone off. So if it's 10 years, we're still making phone calls every once in a while with the job seeker and the employer.
I just wanted to go back to the accommodation question, because I think that's a really important one, and Barb referenced it, and I think sometimes the fear from employers is the accommodations are going to be so big or overwhelming, expensive. And
like 18 iPads
that's
all
right.
over the place.
Yeah. And our experience is the accommodations aren't more than they are for somebody without a disability. They're just different. So, just an example of, we have an employee who has to leave every day at 3 o'clock to pick up her child from school. That's an accommodation that we do regularly. We don't think about it. But sometimes employers don't think that that's an accommodation. That's just being a good employer. And I would say that really is typically the experience for most employers, is the accommodations aren't really overwhelming, and that's our role, is to help with figuring that out.
Well, for most of us in a place of employment, once we're inside the door and you show how useful you are, most of the time you can have just a one-on-one conversation with the supervisor, and the supervisor is interested in having you be happy and stay in that role. I mean, so accommodations certainly happen.
I think that
across the board with everybody.
That's right. I think what's different is we actually talk about the accommodations before they're in the door.
Up front.
Yes.
Tina, you have a question from the floor.
Yes. Are there other employers besides the City of Edmonton that the agencies are partnering with now that you've had this model be successful?
I think, Again, it's how you view partnering. I think how we see it is that every situation where we're supporting a job seeker and supporting an employer is a partnership. We do that with large companies. We do it with really small grassroots companies. We are in a partnership with the City of St. Albert. We partner with high schools and for work experience programs. So for us, every situation is a partnership.
As a group, though, have you, like in these other partnerships you're mentioning, are they with other agencies?
Ours is just with Gateway Association at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind it's quite a new program, right?
It is.
I mean, it just got started up last July, so.
Yeah.
Has there been any added cost to your I mean, Ruth, you'd mentioned that you felt like it was taking this program took less time to work with an individual and finding a job than otherwise. But have there been other added costs to abilities at work for your organizations that otherwise you wouldn't have?
I think there haven't been added costs. I think it's resourcing the resources that we have. For example, we try to keep only one job coach with all of our individuals who are employed through the City of Edmonton. So they are aware of the protocol, they know all the processes and standards, so then employers are not getting different people all the time, they're getting one consistent person. That's been the only different thing for us.
Personally, I find it more a cost-effective way of doing it because positions already come in. You know that there's a willingness to hire. You know that the employer or the managers are on board. So, and then it's at that one meeting where you do it via email. So I think it's a way more direct and cost-effective approach because you don't have to have someone go out, approach other HR departments. So I think it has actually saved time and cost than the other way.
And that customization again also removes some of that heavy job coaching piece too, right?
Yeah.
Because you're relying on the natural abilities of the job seeker and the needs of the employer. That's a natural relationship that occurs, and so your natural support sort of takes over for what traditionally maybe an agency would have to pay for support or job coaching.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to jump back to a little bit was the question about if the organizations have partnered with other employers, and there's only certain times where that would really be necessary. I mean, one of the reasons why we have different organizations for this one program is so that we have a bigger candidate pool to draw from. I mean, if it's a small employer, small business, just looking to hire one person, there might not be a reason to get different organizations together.
And from our side, it's a capacity issue. I can speak for us. There's no way we would have been able to facilitate 10 placements in 2013. We just wouldn't have the capacity. So,
tell me about the new vocabulary that you found that you're using around the table. I mean, obviously new in the last 5 years probably, but tell me about placements, clients. These are words that I think within the employment industry it's being used a lot, and you guys have chosen not to use those words at this table. Tell us what you're using instead and why.
They're people. They're new hires. They're people who need jobs.
So instead of placements,
I think the more you start to shift that language into traditional language used in the field, the more that others the person that you're finding a position for. So that person has every desire to be treated the same as everyone else at work. So the more you move away from that traditional language, the better the opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah, and that's the idea of using terms candidates, right? I mean, that's what we use at the city for anyone that's a prospective job seeker. So why would it be different with this program? And it's also, the idea of, rather than a placement which could have connotations of, is it unpaid? Is it just a work experience? And they're hires, right? So.
Why has this mark been so critical to the city, from your perspective?
First and foremost, it is the business need that I was talking about before. There is a need to have this kind of work done where, maybe it is a routine type of task that can be carved off to make someone available to do other higher level tasks. It's not very fiscally responsible to have someone getting paid $40 an hour to be filing papers into an envelope for 4 hours. So I mean that's one piece of it, but also the city has a very strong commitment to diversity and inclusion. Like I was saying, I'm part of an outreach team for that. We also have a diversity and inclusion section. And it's something that, like I was saying, we do want to make sure that we have a workforce that's reflective of the community that we serve.
And what percentage of people with disabilities are in our Canadian society? Is it 13.8%? 13.8%. Okay, so you guys are working towards that number, I guess, within the city. What is your goal for this program in terms of numbers? How many new hires do you want to have through the Abilities at Work program?
Well, like I was saying, it's a new program, so we set ourselves some pretty ambitious goals for it. We did have a goal of getting 10 hires in 2013, which we managed to hit, and we have another goal of trying to find 15 more in 2014. Beyond that, the city doesn't consider this to be the be-all, end-all solution to hiring people with intellectual disabilities. It's the first step. So, I mean, every kind of program as you're going along will evolve, and I'm sure that'll happen with this one. So we just got an idea of where we'd like to go for 2014, and we'll reevaluate after that.
Please continue to be putting your questions up on the video chat window there. Are there any new ones, Tina?
Yeah, Courtney wants to know if there's been any media coverage of this partnership so far.
We do have a video out on YouTube for it. That's the one we'll be showing at the end of this. Media-wise, I don't think there really has been any yet. The program has just been nominated for one of the Mayor's Awards, so Shaw will be creating a video for it for that. That'll be happening in May. Yeah, it's still pretty new. So
expanding this program to other employers across the province. I know that there's many viewers from not just Edmonton, but across the province. How can others who are outside of Edmonton perhaps get involved with an employer in this way? Rotary lady.
So we have partnerships throughout the province, and we're in conversations right now with other municipalities, the City of Grande Prairie. We have a meeting with the City of Calgary upcoming. So our hope is to use the model that's being used with the City of Edmonton to expand this kind of partnership across the province and other municipalities.
So how do you see that working in terms of the model, like taking the protocol and parameters that you guys are using around the table and essentially using that as a best practice around the City of Grande Prairie's?
Yeah, so, or for example, the City of Calgary is about the same size of an employer as the City of Edmonton. If they were willing to be in partnership, again, there's no way, I don't think any one agency could, manage it. So we would look at creating something similar as to what we've done with this partnership with the City of Edmonton.
What have you felt to be some of the difficulties or challenges that have come up in the last 7 months that you've had to problem solve?
I would say they're the same as any other new hire, really. Someone might be better able to perform a task that's not assigned, or maybe you need to rebundle those tasks a little bit or fine tune. I think that's no different than any other person who gets a job.
Or a job with all the best intentions. You have the right job seeker or put forward job seekers, somebody's interviewed, they're hired, and it doesn't work out, just like it does for the non-disabled population. So I would say the same thing. There hasn't been anything unique in terms of challenges. I don't think in terms of the partnership, I echo what was said before, I don't think there actually has been challenges in terms of the partnership. The challenges have come with our typical work.
Yeah, and I like to think that's because of all the work we put in ahead of time to get the program started.
Yes.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions from the web? Well, we have 7 more minutes, so please do add your questions to the chat window if you have them.
I can talk a little bit. I think one of the pieces that was quite important on the city side too was that there was top-down support. Besides the collaboration that we have with the organizations in this room, and like I was saying with the Coalition of Civic Unions, we also had to get approval for this program from our corporate leadership team. So those are all the general managers of the different departments of the city manager, that kind of thing. And that was something that we were able to get, and that made it a lot easier for then going forward. And like Wendy was saying earlier, trying to find the champions in the city, the ones where, you know, it's inefficient to go just knock on every door and say like, hey, what do you think about this? Having those connections and the support from the top down, and having strategic advisors who can put you in front of the right people, so that already from the get-go you're starting from a run rather than a crawl, right?
But what's interesting there is that they, from the top though, they haven't said to every single manager in every single department, hey, you have to hire someone through abilities at work, right? They've kind of allowed you to do some of the grassroots work and in a neat way. Now, why were you needing those? Why were you needing to go through those routes though? Because of the way that you were creating a different.
Well, that, and I mean, the city's huge. There's over 1,000 different hiring managers. I mean, yeah, like I was saying, over 10,000 employees, right? So to know which of those to hit, to try to go up and see if they would be open to this type of program, rather than just guessing and picking a name out of a table. It's much more effective if you know this person has been directed, that they could be directed to me, as they would be already supportive and can go in and talk about the program and see if it's a fit for them.
So sorry, can you explain that again? How did you find those leaders within the organization?
It's from networking and contacting. So we have with the city strategic coordinators and strategic advisors that for each of the different departments. So they have really direct access to whether it's the branch managers or directors, and so they're able to have some of those conversations because they were informed about the program as well, to just get a bit of, what do you think about this? And it's like, if there's maybe a bit more questions, that's when I can get put in front of them and let them know all the details and the support that we can provide, and go from there.
And what are the kind of qualities that you're seeing that is pretty consistent across the board for those leader managers? I'm imagining creative is one.
Yeah, and flexibility would maybe be another thing, and just openness. So, I mean, I don't know if there's other things that you guys have seen from
openness
the
would
supervisors.
be the biggest one. Yeah, I think.
And I think for some of them it is important that diversity and inclusion is something that's key to them as leaders, that this is going to provide a diverse workforce as well. It's going to change the climate of your work environment. So I think those leaders do have that vision that it's going to make a huge impact on the individual that's being employed, as well as the culture. It's the moving culture.
With the job shortages in the province, there's a strong business case for hiring inclusively. There just is. And employers recognize that very quickly after having a successful inclusive hiring experience.
So along with all of those things being open, the leaders that we find are successful are the leaders that we would say typically are successful. Really good communicators, good listening skills, create time, right, to have relationship with the employee. And we often hear from supervisors and managers that the benefit to them is they've become better leaders, because they've really had to learn to think about how they communicate and what the team looks like and those messages going out. So I would say the typical things that we think are leadership strengths are exactly those leaders that we're looking for.
Well, and this is the thing, is it's not just the individual who's hired who has an opportunity and an advantage. This is something that's really advantageous to the department. And you've already heard that, I understand, from some of the leaders in terms of their culture. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean,
what has been their feedback?
Well, for a lot of them, they've seen tremendous culture change even in a short amount of time. I mean, maybe I'll let some of the partners talk about that from the placements, but.
Like, what do you mean, like, culture change? Like, explain, like, a culture can change in a number of ways. Like, what's the culture change that they're explaining?
A lot of times people with intellectual disabilities don't get opportunities to work. So when they are valued and become a valued part of an organization, they show up on time. They show up consistently. They work hard when they're there.
They're actually happy to be at work.
They're happy to be at work. And so what employer doesn't want to capitalize on that kind of a person in an area? So I think, again, regardless disability or not, I think having an employee that's like that, that bleeds out. That has a trickle effect no matter where you work,
So it's
who
like
you're
a
working
positive
with.
energy that's...
Yeah, and it's, you know, some people rededicate themselves. Some people, you know, feel, you know, and the personal connections again. Like it's
I had a supervisor say to me the other day, because our job seeker had called in sick, and she was going to be a really busy day, and she kind of muttered under her breath, "Oh darn!" And I said, "No, I'm sorry, like he's really sick." "Oh no," she said, "it's not that." She said, "Everybody's just so much nicer to each other when he's at work."
Oh my gosh.
So I think that anecdotally speaks to, right, the difference
and that
in
happens.
culture.
That happens all the time.
Wonderful. One more question from the floor. I think Tina's got her mic up.
Yeah, right before we get to your video. First, why do you cap out at 16 hours a week? Is it?
Well, part of that was when we were doing the best practice research, we found that for a lot of people with intellectual disabilities, when you're getting up to that, you know, the 14, 15, 16 hours per week, that's essentially full-time for them. That's, you know, there's not a lot of energy for, you know, to be able to work that 40-hour work week. And so that was part of the reason that that we decided to go with that as kind of our cap for it.
Okay. And one quick last one. How were the participating agencies and associations chosen to work with the city?
Well, for the initial bit, what we had to do is, you know, this was something that was put forward from Mayor and Council that, you know, they'd like us to do more. And so rather than spending, you know, 6 months or a year putting something out there about what each different program had, to get started a bit faster, I used the existing connections that I had with the different partnerships around the table, and we got started with what was here, because each organization here are ones that focus and are experts as far as assisting people with intellectual disabilities. And so our next step is we are looking to expand the program, and we'll be looking to add 2 more partners. So we'll be putting that as an expression of interest soon to make it so that we've got an even larger pool of candidates.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
In looking to the future, where we have work environments that are far more inclusive to individuals with intellectual disabilities, as I understand it, those individuals, even among the folks with disabilities, have the lowest or the highest rates of unemployment of any group of people with disabilities. Is that right? So I guess looking 10 years down the road, seeing that change, seeing those unemployment numbers go down, employment numbers go up among that group of people, what do you see as critical to those numbers, those employment numbers going up? What needs to change, or what needs to be put in place?
I think one of the things is establishing strong partnerships, you know, that they're personalized, that they're individualized, that, you know, we're having partnerships that are willing to sit at the table and kind of go through the process that we've gone through with the city, that, you know, there's that collaborative effort to speak about who is the person, what are best practices, so they understand who individuals with intellectual disabilities are, you know, how do they work best. So I think the biggest thing is to have that collaborative approach, that, and it works.
You guys have shown us that today. It is very clear. And thank you so much to our panel. We're at just a shade over 3. Thank you for sticking with us, webcast viewers. And thank you to the panelists for sharing your insights, the best practice that you're doing here. No doubt you've got many more years ahead to change and to grow and to see, you know, the individuals in Abilities at Work program perhaps change the culture in the city, which will be we'll be excited in 5 years to hear just how much of a shift this program has created for, you know, for your culture. And so we'll be moving now to the video of Alberta, or Abilities at Work, and you can find it on YouTube, as well as the link is in the chat window, so if you'd like to refer to it, again, feel free to copy and paste it into your browser. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
Edmonton, a city of opportunity, a city of dreams. Edmonton is changing right before our eyes lately. There's so much growth and development happening across the city. How will the City of Edmonton keep up with this growth and sustain it? Edmonton may be a city of opportunity, but these opportunities need to be built. We are one city with a shared vision. The City of Edmonton is a place where everyone should have a chance to get ahead, regardless of color, creed, or disability. Diversity and uniqueness make up this city, and for Edmonton to reach its potential, this needs to be reflected in our employees. For a lot of people with intellectual disabilities, they have the potential to be not just good city employees, but great employees, if they're given the chance. Those with intellectual disabilities are often unable to compete on typical job postings and are less likely to be employed than almost any other population. And we understand there are concerns.
How much time do we need to spend on training?
What about safety? We have forklifts moving around and trucks backing in and out.
How much time will she take away from other workers?
Many employers that I have encountered have the fear of the unknown, and many people are not aware of the capabilities of people with intellectual disabilities.
Filing, keeping the supply room organized and neat.
Organizing.
Sorting.
Stocking inventory. Photocopying. Collating.
I can do anything.
A big part of the problem is that managers find that even when they do want to hire someone with a disability, they find that their hands are tied by strict job descriptions and class specs that make it hard to modify hours or remove certain duties. This is where the Abilities at Work program can help. This new program is built around a partnership between the city, its unions, and community agencies. Rather than going through the typical recruitment process where you try to fit people into pre-existing jobs, with this program, areas of the city can create totally customizable positions that not only fill their business needs, but are also aligned to the unique skills of someone with an intellectual disability. They will also be supported the whole way by disability experts from the community organizations. Let's take a look at a few examples of positions that have already been created through the program.
We are at the Employee Service Center. We basically enroll employees in what we call their employment life cycle. Sarah has come to us and she's been with us since May of this year. She's right now in the role of employee records support. So she's been assisting our employee records clerks in things like filing of documentation as well as sorting of documents. Employing people such as Sarah has filled in that gap that we have. I mean, there are a lot of jobs that require different skill sets, and I feel that Sarah does bring the right skill set.
Feels good, especially because people like me don't often get jobs.
Well, we are at Patterson Garage. It's part of ETS. It's a mechanical garage.
We do cycle counts daily, and that's where Kyle comes in. We have him performing cycle counts every day. It's a very vital part of the job.
We really haven't used any special accommodations for Kyle. He comes in, he's got his own locker, he has a computer that he uses every day, so he's fit right in as one of the people.
And the work here is good to do. It's better than sitting at home, that's for sure.
Chrysalis has been great. They've had support workers here for Kyle. They've helped him, they've walked him through, they got him set up, they got him all his schedules. They've been a really big help, and I hope they offer more people like Kyle in the future.
Right now we are right outside the Human Resources Recruitment Office. This is where we do all the recruiting for the City of Edmonton. So Avril right now is helping us in our employment section. She helps with a lot of our filing duties, our other administrative duties. It is definitely a win-win situation for us having Avril on our team. She's able to do some of those routine tasks, and she loves to do the routine tasks. It helps her focus. Once she has learned those tasks, she has been very independent and has learned them quite quickly.
I like working at the city because I always want to work at the city, and I like to work hard, and I like to do the filing and get my work done.
Well, often when we talk about abilities or disabilities, it's a bit like the half-empty glass and the half-full glass. As an organisation, we really want to focus on the half-full glass and to leverage the capabilities that people bring to the table. So why wouldn't we focus on ability?
One of the main reasons that the Coalition of Civic Employees Unions are behind the Abilities at Work program is it gives people a nice, safe work environment. The City of Edmonton is a safe and inclusive employer, and we feel that people with disadvantages, whether they be intellectual or physical, are welcomed in with open arms and open hearts, and they're not taken advantage of in their work environments.
With the Abilities at Work program, positions will be ongoing rather than temporary. with part-time hours that allow flexibility for both the work area and the employee. Thanks to our partnership with key union groups, the program makes use of a unique recruitment process, which the hiring manager has full control of. Thanks to the community organizations, there is substantial support, from identifying tasks to pre-screening and interviewing candidates to helping with training and retention.
Often when hiring inclusively, it's all about the support and knowing how much and how little support someone needs.
What we have found is once a person with a disability starts with an employer, it's just another person, it's another colleague.
These people are excited. They're ready to work and wouldn't give up that opportunity for the world.
As a city, when we're hiring people, obviously, you know, the city itself has objectives. We have our various union groups that are important players in the hiring process. As a city, we have the working relationship agreement. But at the end of the day, if we engage and involve people in building a greater city and encouraging people to be involved with the city, we're all going to be better off for it.
People often get so caught up in seeing the barriers to hiring someone with a disability and focusing on what someone with a disability cannot do. This doesn't happen with other job seekers. You wouldn't judge a hockey goalie because he isn't good at scoring goals, just like you wouldn't judge an accountant because he isn't able to operate a forklift. We need to stop thinking about what someone with a disability cannot do and instead focus on abilities.